My name is Brenda, and I have an incredible tale to share with you. I'm 33 years old, and until recently, I was employed as a cosmetologist at this posh clinic in the heart of the city. It wasn't a horrible job, you know. I got to help people feel good about themselves, and I got paid well. But I've always had this itch, this desire to be the boss of my own business. I'd like to introduce you to the second important character in this messy little drama, which is my spouse, who is actually my ex-husband, but we'll get to that juicy bit later. Identify him as Jack. Jack, who is 5 years my senior, was formerly a manager at a well-known construction company. We've been living at my apartment for the past 3 years of our marriage. Jack would add, sipping a drink on the couch, "Baby, I'm telling you, opening your own place is the way to go. You'd decide your own hours and be in charge. Is that the dream? Correct?" I would nod, a sense of exhilaration rising within me. "Yeah, you're right, but it's going to take a lot of work and money to get there," I'd respond. Jack would dismissively wave his hand. "It's nothing to worry about. We'll work things out. I'll help you get it going as you do. You concentrate on being a fierce company owner." I thus began to save. There were no more expensive dinners, new clothes, or anything else. Every additional cash went into my business fund. I had a goal in mind. Jack would always say, "Geez, Britt, you don't have to be so strict," when I would decline to get takeout for the third time in a row. I'd say, "Every dollar counts, Jack," and reheat some leftover food. We agreed on this, remember? He would complain, then nod. "Indeed, you are correct. In the end, it will be worthwhile." It's definitely time for me to bring up Jack's prior marriage. After their divorce, he told me he had left his flat to his ex-wife. I knew little more about them than that they had been together for 5 years. He would act quite cynical whenever I tried to bring it up. After several months, I felt at last prepared to make the move. I resigned from the clinic, obtained my license, located the ideal small space, and began remodeling. Making decisions on what equipment to acquire and how to decorate took up every day. After what seemed like an eternity, I was at last prepared to open. I put in a ton of overtime 7 days a week, from sunrise to far after sunset. In those first 2 weeks, I didn't see Jack very often. He would be asleep when I got home. He was still snoring when I got up in the morning. My phone started vibrating a lot one day when I was getting a facial. Since I'm a professional, I first disregarded it. But I became concerned when it persisted. What if Jack had suffered a setback? I checked my phone as soon as my client departed and discovered that my mother-in-law Sandra had missed 5 calls. My stomach fell out. Sandra only ever made crucial phone calls. With my heart racing, I gave her a call back. "Sandra, is everything okay?" With a trembling voice, she murmured, "Brenda, thank goodness." Jack and I had been attempting to communicate all day. He's involved in some sort of scandal at work, and I'm having trouble reaching him. I'm very worried. I had the impression of being drenched in icy water. Scandal? What controversy? "Sandra, I have no knowledge of any scandals. I haven't heard anything from Jack." On the other end of the telephone, there was a prolonged silence. "Oh," Sandra at last uttered. "I see. Okay, ask him to phone me if you hear from him." I was up all night waiting for Jack. Near midnight, he staggered in, his breath heavy with beer. "Where have you been?" Trying not to raise my voice too much, I asked. "Your mother has been reaching out to you all day. Something concerning a workplace scandal." Jack froze, then sighed deeply. He slouched down on the sofa, avoiding eye contact. "Perhaps I ought to have informed you earlier. About a month ago, I left my work." It was as though someone had taken the wind out of me. "A month? You haven't had a job for a month and you never thought to bring it up. What took place?" He said angrily, "I got into a fight with my boss." He was acting in a it was just too much for me to handle. My pride prevented me from staying. I inhaled deeply as I attempted to comprehend this shocking news. Jack had been at home the entire time while I was pushing myself to the bone. "Why didn't you look for another job?" I responded. Jack gave me a beseeching look. "I believe I'm exhausted, Britt. I should take a break. Perhaps I should visit a psychologist. I simply cannot bear to start a new career at this time." I wanted to scream at him in part. Damn it, we had a plan. He was meant to help us out while I launched the company. However, observing him sitting there, dejected and diminutive, I found it difficult to confront him. At last, I said, "Okay, we'll resolve this. But Jack, no more secrets. Our role is to work as a team." With a look of relief on his face, he nodded. "I apologize, Britt. No more secrets, I swear." I had no idea that would be the first of many promises he would breach. The ensuing weeks were difficult. I began taking on additional shifts at my previous practice, working afternoons at the clinic and mornings at my office. It was tiresome, but I had no other option. In addition to paying my office loan back, we also had bills to pay. Jack played video games most of the time he was at home, ostensibly searching for work online. I made an effort to be encouraging and kept telling myself how vital mental health was. But when the weeks stretched into months, I began to question whether he was actually making an effort at all. And then, at last, a ray of optimism. One day, Jack returned home beaming from ear to ear. He exclaimed, "I got a job." I could have cried with relief. That evening, we raised a bottle of wine in celebration of our fresh starts. It seemed for a little moment that everything might work out. Jack worked there for just 1 month. One day, after a particularly demanding day, I found him slumped on the couch, a beer in his hand, staring at the TV without making any sense. I uttered, "You're home early," with a sickening feeling in my gut. With a shrug, he continued to stare at the television. Quit. It was as though I had taken a punch to the gut. "What? Why not?" Jack mumbled. "Boss wanted me to be a robot that was obedient to commands and disciplined. Ignore that noise." Trying not to lose my temper, I took a deep breath. "Jack, we discussed this earlier. We simply cannot afford for you to continue leaving jobs." At last, he gave me a hard look. "What? Am I meant to be unhappy?" "Britt, I had hoped you would be more sympathetic." I was furious inside, but I refrained from starting a fight by biting my tongue. Getting the picture? He was sitting around sipping beer and playing video games, and I was pushing myself to the bone. The ensuing half-year was a haze of labor, strain, and growing annoyance. When I returned home, Jack was waiting for me with empty beer cans and takeout cartons all around him. "Any luck with the job search?" Attempting to control my desperation, I would beg. "Nothing good out there." He would dismissively wave his hand in response. "I'm looking for something interesting, with good pay, but not too demanding." I was itching to yell. A job like that, who wouldn't want one? However, those occupations weren't handed to you. They required labor from you. One evening, following an especially demanding day, I arrived home to see Jack was genuinely awake. His eyes were filled with an odd, animated expression. "Britt, I've been thinking," he began, yanking me onto the lounge next him. "We should have a baby." I looked at him, certain that I had misheard. "What?" "Yes, give it some thought." He smiled. "I might become a stay-at-home parent. I would look after the child while you went to work. It's flawless." I was hearing things that I couldn't believe. "You haven't even cleaned a plate in this place, Jack. How are you going to look after a child?" His expression dimmed. "What, you don't think I could do it?" I tried to seem diplomatic by saying, "It's not that. It's just that taking care of a baby is a lot of work, and we're not exactly in a great financial position right now." saying in a hushed voice, "You're being cruel. You don't understand my problems." I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "Your problems, Jack? I'm working 7 days a week. I'm exhausted, and you want to add a baby to this mess?" He stormed off, slamming the bedroom door behind him. I sat on the couch, my head in my hands, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. It started with the computer games. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a hobby, right? But then I noticed our joint account was hemorrhaging money. "Jack," I said one evening, my voice tight with frustration, "did you buy another game? And did you upgrade your computer?" He didn't even look up from the screen. "Yeah, so what? It's our money, isn't it?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We're supposed to be saving, remember? For our future." He paused the game and turned to me, his face a mask of innocence. "Babe, it's an investment in my leisure time, you know. Don't worry, I'll pay it all back when I get a job." That was the last straw. The next day, I closed our joint account and stopped giving Jack money altogether. If he wanted to act like a child, fine, but I wasn't going to be his personal ATM anymore. I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. The fight started almost immediately. Jack would stomp around the apartment, slamming doors and muttering under his breath. "You don't respect me," he'd yell. "You're trying to control me." I tried to reason with him. "Jack, I'm just trying to keep us afloat. We can't keep spending money we don't have." He stormed off, leaving me standing in the kitchen, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. Days went by, and Jack didn't lift a finger around the apartment. Dishes piled up in the sink, laundry overflowed the hamper, and takeout containers littered every surface. I was working myself to the bone, and he couldn't even be bothered to run a vacuum. Then came the day that changed everything. I came home early from work, a migraine pounding behind my eyes. As I approached our apartment door, I heard Jack's voice drifting through the open window. "Yeah, Mom, I need a new suit for this great new job," he was saying. "Could you spot me some cash? I'll pay you back as soon as I get my first paycheck." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. New job? What new job? I burst into the apartment, startling Jack so badly he dropped his phone. "What new job, Jack?" I demanded. He stammered, trying to come up with a lie on the spot, but I'd caught him red-handed. "You were going to take money from your parents for a job that doesn't exist?" I was shaking with anger. "I was going to tell you," he mumbled. "Tell me what?" "That you're a liar. That you'd rather scam your own parents than get off your ass and find a real job." The fight that followed was epic. We screamed, we cried, we said things we couldn't take back. In the end, Jack grabbed a bag and stormed out, saying he was going to stay with his parents for a while. As the door slammed behind him, I sank to the floor, my head in my hands. I was successful. I was driven. I had my own business. And yet here I was, married to a man who seemed determined to drag us both down. The days after Jack stormed out were weird. I kept expecting him to come crawling back, full of apologies and promises to do better. But as one day turned into 2, then 3, then a week, there was nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a lousy email. Part of me was relieved. The apartment was peaceful for once. No more walking on eggshells, no more cleaning up after a grown man who acted like a teenager. But another part of me was worried. What if something had happened to him? Just when I was starting to consider calling his parents, my phone rang. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart pounding. "Jack, where are you? Are you okay?" His voice came through loud and cheerful. "Hey, babe, guess where I am? Las Vegas. Can you believe it? Mom always wanted to come here, so we decided to make it a family trip. It's amazing." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Las Vegas, while I was here worrying about him. What do you mean we decided? I asked, my voice tight. When did you decide this? Oh, it was kind of spur of the moment, he said, his voice nonchalant. I told Mom and Dad about my great new job offer, and we thought, why not celebrate? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. What job offer, Jack? We both know there isn't one. There was a pause. Then Jack's voice came back, lower this time. Look, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? We're having a great time. I'll find a job when we get back, I promise. And how exactly are you paying for all this? I asked, dreading the answer. Oh, don't worry about that, he said, his voice bright again. I borrowed a couple of your credit cards, but don't freak out. I'll bring you back a magnet or something, okay? Have a great weekend. And then he hung up, just like that. I stood there staring at my phone, feeling like my whole world was crumbling around me. This man, this person I had married, had stolen my credit cards to fund a vacation based on a lie. Something inside me snapped. I was done. No more second chances, no more excuses. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and blocked every single one of my cards. Then I called the locksmith. I need my locks changed, I said. Today, as soon as possible. The locksmith came and went, and I was left alone in an apartment that suddenly felt too big, too empty. But I wasn't done yet. I grabbed my phone and made one more call to a divorce lawyer. Sitting in the lawyer's office later that day, I felt a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, but also relief as I signed the divorce papers. I realized this was the first step towards taking back control of my life. I was just settling in for a quiet evening at home, the first in what felt like forever, when my phone started buzzing. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Britt, thank God you picked up. Jack's voice was frantic. Something's wrong with the cards. They're not working. We can't pay for anything. I could hear the panic in his voice, but felt oddly calm. That's because I blocked them, Jack. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. You what? Why would you do that? Because they're my cards, Jack. I didn't give you permission to use them. But we're stranded here. Mom and Dad are freaking out. You have to unblock them. I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I stood my ground. No, I don't have to do anything. You got yourself into this mess. You can get yourself out. That's when he lost it. Are you kidding me? You're putting me in an impossible situation here. You're my wife. You're supposed to help me. Unblock the cards right now, or I swear to God I'll divorce you. I burst out laughing. A full belly laugh that felt like it was coming from someplace deep inside me that had been locked away for too long. Oh, Jack, I said once I could speak again. You're a little late for that threat. And I hung up. The next day, I rented a storage unit and packed up all of Jack's things. Every shirt, every game console, every little knick-knack that reminded me of him. It all went into boxes and then into storage. I knew Jack would be coming home soon, probably expecting to waltz right back into our apartment like nothing had happened. Well, he was in for a surprise. Sure enough, a few days later, my phone rang again. Jack's voice was a mix of confusion and anger. Britt, what the hell? I can't get into the apartment. Yes, I did, I said calmly. Your things are in a storage unit. I'll text you the address and unit number. My things? What are you talking about? Let me in. Britt, this isn't funny. I took a deep breath. This is it. I'm not joking, Jack. I've filed for divorce. The papers should be arriving at your parents' house any day now. There was a long silence. Divorce? Britt, come on. You can't be serious. We can work this out. Let's start over, okay? I'll do better, I promise. It's over, Jack, I said firmly. I've made my decision. Please don't contact me again except through my lawyer. I blocked his phone and hung up. I was filled with a strange mixture of feelings as I sat there in my lonely apartment: relief, anger at all the lies and treachery, and sadness for what could have been. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a very long time. My phone called with an unknown number a few days after I banned Jack's number. Thinking that Jack might be attempting to contact me from a different phone, I almost chose not to answer, but I had to pick up for anything. "Hey," I spoke carefully. "Sandra here, Brenda, Jack's mom." My tummy tightened. I anticipated the inevitable outburst of rage about spoiling their family vacation, being a bad wife, and abandoning my man. I said, "Sandra," attempting to sound impartial, "I apologize for the events that occurred in Las Vegas." But she interrupted me. "No, Brenda, it's my responsibility to apologize. I'm very let down by Jack. I believed that he had evolved." "Explain what you mean," I inquired, my interest piqued. On the other end of the telephone, there was a lengthy sigh. "Brenda, you should be aware of this. As he told you, Jack's first marriage ended not because of a growing distance between them. His former spouse parted ways with him due to his carelessness, deceit, incapacity to maintain employment, and pilfering. It was as though I had taken a punch to the gut. He didn't tell me." "I am aware," Sandra muttered. We hoped that living with you, observing your diligence and maturity, would motivate him to change, to mature." I could hear the sadness in her voice as she faltered. I experienced a wave of empathy for her. She had fallen for the same tricks that I had. "I'm so sorry, Sandra," I murmured. "I was clueless." "No, Brenda, I apologize," she firmly said. "We apologize for not providing you with the complete information from the start. I apologize for letting you go through this. Furthermore, I apologize beyond words for what Jack did to you." Tears began to form in my eyes. "I'm grateful," I muttered. Sandra went on. "I want you to know that we kicked him out when we found out the truth. How he had been lying to you for months. How he had stolen your credit cards. And how he had been lying to us about having a job. Right now, he is not welcome in our house." I was unable to speak. Jack's family was the one I was most afraid would judge me, and here they were, supporting me. Sandra remarked, "I don't blame you for divorcing him, Brenda. You are so deserving of better. I only hope that Jack's actions don't make you think poorly of the rest of us." "No, without a doubt not," I blurted out. "I never laid the blame on you or your spouse, Sandra. You've shown me kindness consistently." We continued our conversation, with Sandra enlightening me on some of the information I had overlooked. After we hung up, I had the impression that something heavy had been removed from my shoulders. In this, I wasn't by myself. I wasn't crazy to feel furious and deceived. The weeks that followed my talk with Sandra were when everything began to fall into place. I lost myself in my profession and took comfort in my cosmetology office's rituals. Without Jack's incessant drama and financial burden, I discovered that I had more focus, energy, and, surprisingly, money. But Jack was not going to give up easily. While I was closing up the business one evening, I noticed someone I knew was leaning against my car. My heart fell. "Britt!" I walked over and heard Jack shout out. "Please allow us to speak. I've evolved. I really do want a job, and I'm looking for one now. I will return every penny to you. Please give me another opportunity." I briefly had a sense of nostalgia or sympathy. But then I remembered everything he had done to stress and hurt me. All the falsehoods, all the broken promises. "No," I firmly said. "Jack, I'm done giving you opportunities. Kindly depart." I slid past him and climbed into my car, trembling as I turned on the engine. He was standing there, appearing lost, in my rearview mirror as I was leaving. However, I didn't go back. That was my final encounter with Jack in person. He made several more attempts to call from other numbers, but I was able to stop them all. Eventually, there was no more controversy, and the divorce was finalized. Furthermore, what do you know? Things improved in life. Much improved. My own finances significantly improved when Jack's unemployment and spending were no longer a constant source of stress. I was able to give my cosmetology office my whole attention, and it showed. Word of mouth spread, my clientele expanded, and before long, I was busier than ever. I decided to give up my part-time work at the clinic and devote all of my attention to running my own company. Although it was unsettling at first, it ended up being the finest choice I could have done. Having more time and energy allowed me to dedicate myself entirely to marketing and growing my business. To help with the growing workload, I brought on 2 other cosmetologists, and all of a sudden I wasn't just a cosmetologist, I was a manager. The financing I had taken out to launch the company was repaid early. The ongoing concern about just scraping by has vanished. I felt confident in my finances for the first time in a long time. However, it went beyond money. I began to treat myself to small indulgences, like the shoes I had been eyeing for months, weekend getaways, and elegant dinners out. Things that I had previously always convinced myself we should set aside all of our money for some undefined future that would never seem to come. Looking over the blueprints for our new treatment room from my enlarged office, I can't help but be amazed at how much has changed. I've moved past just getting by. I'm doing great. And I completed it all by myself. Please understand that it wasn't always simple. There were times when I want to return home and celebrate my accomplishments with a companion. But as I created a life I genuinely valued, those times grew fewer and farther between. In retrospect, I see that divorcing Jack wasn't the end of my story. That was the start of it. That was the time I made my decisions about my goals, my future, and myself. Furthermore, what do you know? In a heartbeat, I would choose to do it over again.